Hey, welcome to the Life and Mission Podcast. My name's Kay Helm, and I'm here to help you with some tips on storytelling and how to write more effectively for your nonprofit, and a few things you can do along those lines to raise more funds. Today, I'm talking about asking for advice and why you should do it. We talk a lot about writing stories and we're sending out information, right? Everything's going out from us to other people, to our supporters, right? And we talk about having relationships with these folks and drawing close to them and getting to know them. But at what point do we actually ask for information or stories from them, right? So I know some of us will go out and have one-to-one meetings. This is great. Yes, do it. Another way to do it, I'm going to focus on today, is asking for advice. So as you craft your essential stories, especially, right? Essential stories, your case documents, when you write your next appeal letter, when you do something big, which should be fairly often, at least 2 or 3 times a year, right? You want some feedback from key supporters on that, right? So ask people, like the people that you want to replicate, the people that you look at them, you look at the way they support you. This is not just amounts, but also the way they engage with you, the way they might encourage you. I mean, these might even be people that aren't necessarily big financial donors, but they're in, right? But you do want also people who are big financial donors, some of your major donors in particular, because they're going to speak to other people who have that capability of being major donors. So you want to write your pieces so that you do appeal to people across the giving spectrum, but you do want to pay special attention to people with that capacity for large gifts, because they do think about money differently and they do talk about money differently. And especially if this isn't your background, you want to understand, hey, am I speaking to this crowd? Am I saying the things that I need to say and doing the things I need to do to speak to people that do understand money? Or am I making them ask questions about, do I know what I'm doing? Or do I understand money? Or how am I handling the funds, right? We don't want to put questions in people's minds, right? So one of the things that you can avoid doing that in your fundraising is by talking to your major donors, by asking them for advice in the way that you communicate. So as you craft your essential stories and your case documents and letters and things like that, um, have a few people. They can be part of your advisory team. So if you're involved in Fully Funded Academy, or if you've read Mary Valloni's book Fundraising Freedom, which I highly recommend, then she talks about building an advisory team. And this is a team that understands that they're part of your fundraising. And you can even have like a give or get total, and that's not what this particular episode's about. But that's a commitment. And what I'm hearing from people a lot of times is they're trying to build this team and they struggle to get people to make that commitment. So while you're waiting and while you're praying for the right people to join that team, you can still ask those people, or ask the people that you want on that team that maybe aren't ready to commit. And you can say, hey, can I just send you something to look at? And it's not a big commitment, but you're saying you could really help me out if you could look at this thing. It's 2 pages, it's front and back. You just look at it once or twice and let me know. I've got a few specific questions about this piece that I'd love to get your advice on. Now that specific questions bit is really important, because a lot of times we send things and we ask people for feedback. And that's different too, right? Asking for feedback means it's really vague, right? Feedback, generally people are going to go, I love it, it's great. Oh yeah, that's good. You can't, that's not advice you can use. Ask for advice, and ask specifically Now, this is not a comprehensive list, but some things you really should include in the question is this clear? Is it easy to understand, right? And then ask this, is it easy for someone who doesn't already know us, who doesn't already know what we do? Could they understand it? Maybe they can take it to a friend and show it to a friend who doesn't know you and do that. You might ask them depending on the relationship. So ask the specific question. Ask them, if it's an appeal letter, are we asking for the right amounts? Do these amounts make sense to you in light of our goal of whatever the amount is, right? Ask them, does anything in this letter raise questions about us that we might need to answer with maybe assumptions that we make when we write? Because one of the things that happens is you're so close to what you do that you make assumptions on the reader. You skip over important pieces, and we all do this because we know what we know and the readers don't know. And we have Donald Miller calls it the curse of knowledge. So it's more than the people reading it know, and sometimes we skip over important things that they need, and it causes questions in their minds, and people who have questions in their minds don't give. So we need to cover that. And so ask them, does this leave questions? Does this make you wonder about us? Especially questions that might inhibit giving. How can we clarify this? Be really specific, especially if you read the piece and maybe you're like, I'm not sure, does that sentence work? Then say, this sentence here, I'm kind of struggling with it. I can't, does it work? How else, how would you maybe reword that and get their advice? You don't have to take their advice, but you get their advice. And any other specific question, right, that you have about the piece that you're working on, ask them that. There can be other things, but mostly, is it clear and does it raise any unnecessary questions? Those are always good things, but ask them specifically for things when you ask for advice. And by doing that, you will get better responses. You will spark actual conversations about not only the piece, but about what you do and how you communicate about it and who you are, like what your values are. I mean, it can really spark actually deep conversations, which are great conversations to have with your supporters. And sometimes you can actually get supporters who will help you in this, and it will open up conversations about, this is the way I think about giving. You can ask them that, right? What are the things that are on your mind when you get an appeal letter? What are the questions that we should be answering in this? What are the points we need to make sure we hit? Get your donors' feedback, especially a major donor. Get their feedback on that. And their advice, right? Advice, not feedback. So it's really cool because they will often tell you exactly what you need to do to raise more money from them. And then go do it. Now, I'm not promising you that they're going to give more, but they're going to love that you asked. They're going to love that you listened to them. And what they're really going to love too is when you actually take their advice or try it out, even if you test it, like if they advise you and it goes against something that you kind of understand as a best practices, for example, or something that you've found, maybe you've tried it before, don't go, wow, we did that before and it didn't work. Don't toss out their advice, because then you kind of shut off the faucet of more advice, right? And so if you will take that advice, maybe run a split test, right, where you try it, their wording, your wording, or something, test things out. There's ways to do that. Try it out, and then report back to them. Hey, we tried this. You can say, we did a test. We tried the sentence I had and the sentence you gave me, and here's the one that performed better with our audience. And, if theirs didn't do well, you go, hey, who knew? You don't know until you test it. I think they'll appreciate that you tried it. Anyway, that's just one way to approach that. But at any rate, they'll be honored that you asked them for advice. They will be happy to use their skills. I asked a donor one time who her day job is that, well, she's a business owner, plus she also does some work for the government, and she's really good with spreadsheets. It's amazing. You know, when you call somebody up and you say, I'm struggling with this spreadsheet, I'm trying to do this budget, and there has to be an easier way. Surely Excel can total this kind of thing up for me, and I don't know how to do it. And it took her, you know, a minute to explain it to me. She was happy to use her skills that she uses every day in huge like government budgets. And and then she's, you know, asked me more questions about, you know, and she's reminded me too, hey, if you need more help on Excel, I'm here. She wants to use her skills. And you have people that have these skills that can make your life easier, whether it's a formula on an Excel sheet or somebody that is willing to maybe proofread all of your stuff before it goes out. Or just in that advice, you know, like, does this make sense? Is this clear? That's really valuable. And we say we want people to partner with us, but do we? This is one way that you can ask your donors, your supporters, to partner with you in a real way that is really going to impact your ministry. And it's going to be good for both of you. And you'll both be glad you did. So that's it for the Life and Mission podcast today. I'm Kay Helm. Hey, you, go find your story? No. What is my tagline? Help? Find your voice, tell your story, change the world. By the way, that tagline, somebody else wrote it for me.